Friends, I hope you had a great celebration of All Hallows Eve yesterday. And today I want to tell you the story of the Feast of All Saints. November the 1st is celebrated as the Feast of All Saints in the Catholic Church and some of the Protestant churches, and on another date in the Eastern churches. Now, most of you know that after the death and resurrection of Jesus, the followers of Christ were brutally persecuted. And this persecuted continued for about 250 years. About 312 AD, Constantine, the great Roman emperor, passed the Edict of Milan. And by this edict, persecutions stopped. Now, he becomes a Christian much later, but the fact that the church found security was a great moment in the history of Christianity. The early church, when they looked back at the 250 years of persecution, they found it to be very important to honor the martyrs and those people who were persecuted for their faith, particularly the victims of the Diocletian persecution. This was the lengthiest and the worst of all persecution. It lasted from about 284 AD to about 305 AD. The Christians, if they had to honor every person on any individual day, there would not be days left in the year to celebrate and to commemorate all the martyrs and the heroes that had died for their faith. And so the celebration of a common day to honor the saints or the heroes of the church almost becomes inevitable. Now, we don't know how this feast actually originated, but we do know that they find mention in some of the fathers of the church. So Saint Ephraim, who died in 373 AD, in his preachings, you find mention to All Saints. And also, John Chrysostom, who died in 473 AD, you find mention in his preaching too. But it was Pope Boniface IV who actually formally began a celebration, and he did this when the Pantheon in Rome was dedicated to Mary. And he did this on May the 13th, 609 AD. So that's the formal beginning. And then it was Pope Gregory III in about the 8th century who transfers the date from May the 13th to November the 1st. And maybe the Feast of All Hallows the celebration of All Hallows has something to do with it being celebrated on November the 1st. But that's for another day. Now, today for us, we know that millennia have passed since the feast originally began. Why do we celebrate it today? See, the Feast of All Saints keeps its original meaning in mind, which is, let's celebrate all those people, and we don't know some of them by name. Let's celebrate all those people who the church recognizes officially as saints, and those that she cannot, because, hey, here's the good news, there are so many saints in the church. And some of those saints are people from our towns and cities, from our neighborhoods, from our parishes, from our families. Think about maybe a grandparent that you truly look up as an exemplary Christian. Maybe your parents, a sibling, somebody, a friend of yours that you know, who truly lived a very exemplary Christian life. It's the feast of every person that has entered heaven. And there aren't enough days in the year to celebrate them all. So there is good news in the church. We have too many saints to celebrate within 1 year. So we have the Feast of All Saints. Now, what does it mean for us today as we celebrate this feast? First of all, the celebration is a celebration of God's love. And what I mean by that is that today's first reading for this feast says, "See what love the Father has for us, that we are called children of God." Yes, God has invited us into God's life. God has made us part of God's life. We have become part of God's life. God has opened heaven to us. God has opened eternity to us. We are called children of God. We are called saints. So really, it's a celebration of who God is and who God has invited us to be, children of God. And I think this is where I find the beauty of the feast. It's a very beautiful, good, loving, and a joyous feast, because it's a great thing to be in God's presence and to be invited to be in God's presence. Secondly, it's a celebration of ordinary folks and the great heroes who are recognized as saints in the church. And particularly the fact that it's a celebration of ordinary people that makes this feast very, very dear to me. It's one thing for me to honor, people like Mother Teresa, John Paul II, Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Ignatius Loyola, and those who are on the way to sainthood, like Blessed Oscar Romero. Now, these were ordinary folks who lived extraordinary lives, but what about the ordinary folks who were holy in sometimes very ordinary ways? They have also entered heaven and they are with God, and we celebrate them too. So the church does not forget its great heroes or its heroes that do not find mention. But then there's one more meaning to this feast, and we find that in today's gospel reading. So the gospel reading is the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek of heart. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the clean of heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are willing to pay the price for their faith. Holiness and sainthood sometimes is trying to do ordinary things, but we do it in an extraordinary way. So today, if you try to be poor in spirit, if you try to be meek and compassionate and merciful and loving and pure of heart and clean of heart, and if you are a peacemaker today, and if you're willing to pay the price for all of it, then we all have an invitation into God's kingdom. And that is the meaning of all the saints. Folks, we're on the way to sainthood, and let's remain there. Have a great feast. Bye.